Hi, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, which is titled 5 Gear Shifts to Accelerate Your Career. And today's presenter is Alexandra Sleator from Career Accelerator.
Thank you very much, Machi, and hello everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this webinar, and I hope that it will be value-adding to you. I joined JP Morgan, as you can see here, and in the first 6 months of my time there, I had a change in line manager, and I didn't get along at all with this person. As a result, I found myself on the firing line. This was something that was a complete shock to me. I had been a straight A student. I was used to achieving, and here I was at the risk of being let go. Now, this career accident early on really drove the point home for me that I better start giving some thought to my career if I wanted to actually have one. What I've noticed is that many of us, when we take on a first role, don't have the opportunity or the maturity as well to think through whether the job we're taking on is really going to play to our strengths, is going to be aligned with our skills, and whether we're going to even enjoy and like going to the office, getting up every morning in order to do that job. It's only later in life, sometimes it's a process of indeed maturity, or it can be an external development such as becoming a parent, which causes us to ponder and ask ourselves, what is the role, the meaning of my work life as part of my broader life. So indeed, I find that this career accident made me realize the importance of thinking about the meaning of my work life for myself. And indeed, it allowed me to develop strategies, and some of those are embedded in what I will share with you later on. As a result, I had a career that I found very fulfilling and rewarding, both personally and, of course, financially. And you can see some of that. You can notice that I didn't become CEO of any of these banks, but that was not my ambition. So it was also the fact that I knew exactly what mattered. I was after some financial rewards and some promotions. I was keen to make friends of some of my colleagues and clients. I was particularly determined to get a large variety of roles which enabled me to learn. And I was also had lots of appetite to lead increasingly larger teams. And those objectives of mine that gave meaning to my career are those that I realized. So I'm sharing this story just because my belief, of course, based on my own experience and that of people that I've worked with as mentor and coach, is that it is absolutely possible to achieve one's ambitions, whatever those may be when it comes to one's career. But I also want to caution you about thinking things like, my boss will ensure I get promoted, or merit is all I need to build a career. Indeed, building a career does take work, and in fact, the more you want out of it, the more you need to put in. Today, as a so-called career accelerator, as you saw on the first page, I combine the learning from the experiences during that career of mine that I briefly talked about, together with training around coaching and psychology. I believe that I understand my clients' frustrations, problems, challenges, and aspirations, and I hope that the rest of my presentation hopefully will make that point as well. So moving forward in this webinar, who is it for, to make sure people are in the right space? Indeed, it is for young professionals who want to be proactive around managing their career from an early point. And it is also for more seasoned professionals who are looking for time to think and reflect and ponder what next. So in this workshop, you will notice that I'm going to ask you a lot of questions rather than propose a lot of ready-made answers, which in fact may not be suitable for you. And I want you to encourage you to reflect on the personal meaning of your career and have a chance to ponder where are you at in your career, so that you start to identify your current career challenges, but also develop an awareness of possible opportunities. I'm hopeful that you will leave with food for thought around what are your career issues and how you may start to address it. in a more tutorial sort of approach, I will share with you what I call the 5 core building blocks of a career. One of them is called lead, and I will share a model of leadership at that stage, and we will conclude with a special gift that I have for IV Exec members. So indeed, this is our agenda. We will spend most of the time together reviewing the 5 building blocks, which I boldly say are of any career, and I hope that you might agree that those indeed make sense for any type of career as we go forward. I will be happy to take questions as we go along, so I will pause after each of the blocks to ask for questions, but we do have a mop-up time permitting at the end to catch any unanswered questions as well. I have allocated 90 minutes for our time together, and I'm happy to stay on if that would be helpful to some of you. So here are the 5 career building blocks. And indeed, my assertion is that no matter how you define success, when it comes to the professional element of your life, I would like to suggest that these 5 areas will be of relevance. Now let's consider maybe a contrarian example. If I am someone who does not aspire to manage others, then what could be the relevance of the lead building block to me? Well, here lead will of course mean self-lead, because we have to manage ourselves before we can manage others, and it could be also about thought leadership. So those concepts here are very broad, and that's why my contention is that they will be relevant for any career. The building blocks also speak of a personal journey. It is about finding the meaning for you of your career, your solutions, your strategies, and your objectives. It is possible that people will share superficially the same career aspirations. For example, people will say, I want to make more money, I want to get promoted. But what we often find is that people, while they share a similar goal, will have very different reasons to pursue that goal. And it is those reasons that will, in fact, drive the success factor. So as we move through this webinar and we touch on the 5 areas that you see noted here, what I want to suggest to you is to bear in mind the following 2 questions. Beyond asking yourself, what does perform mean? What does get along refer to? Let me suggest that you ask yourself, why? Why does performing matter to me in my career? Why does getting along? Why does know myself? And so on. And then the second question is ask yourself, how? How do I need to behave in order to make happen the what, which is so important to me? So what is it that I might need to do, and how do I need to behave in order to be versatile and have the versatility element benefit my career, if that's something that resonates with me? I hope that as we go through each of the building blocks, this will be clearer. This is just an overview. So without further ado, this is the perform lever, the building block. Let me invite you to ponder a series of questions. And the first one is, does your role play to your strengths? This is about the can-do aspect of your role. Can you really do your job? In order to perform well, we need to have enough mastery of our jobs, and some of us, may need training to compensate for some of the skill gaps. In any way, when we talk about playing to one's strengths, do you know yours? I've found that when I talk to people about their strengths, they're usually able to tell me only about 1 and 2, and the risk there, of course, is that if we're only aware of a few, we might eventually overuse and abuse them. So the idea also is that in our current society, especially in the Western world, because we are asked to perform, you will have noticed in your performance evaluation that people only talk to you about what you can't do. They speak to you about your weaknesses. But you can't build on weakness. You can build only on strengths. So I would suggest that when you have a weakness and it is relevant to your job, then you may want to sandwich it literally in between a few strengths, or use a counterweight. For example, I have one of my clients who is not detail-oriented, but he has one of his team members who is very much so, And so he has effectively outsourced the strengths of detail that he lacks to that other person. So playing to your strengths is not necessarily just an individual process. When we're part of a team, it's also about collaborating. The second question is, do you even like what you do? Do you wake up full of beans, as we say in England, where I'm speaking to you from, and do you feel energized by your job? Or is it that you feel you must make money and pay the mortgage? What is the role of money, and how much of an obligation is it for you to work? Do you want to do your job, or is it that you have to do it? What is the role of purpose in your job? Do you have a sense of being part of something, and do you feel excited about that? How well are you doing against your work objectives? How do you maintain your motivation and drive in working to progress your work objectives? How do you use training to maintain your skill level and even upskill yourself? When you have obstacles and setbacks, how do you handle them and still make it to the finish line? In terms of differentiating yourself from your peers and being possibly recognized for promotion, how do you outperform? How do you set yourself stretch objectives and meet them? And of course, when it comes to work, we have to talk about work-life balance. How good are you at managing your time? How effective are you? The last question to ponder is, how can you ensure you win the promotion you richly deserve? Are you able to properly showcase your achievements? How do you communicate so that your contribution is noticed? Have you figured out the unofficial promotion criteria? And how do you understand and appropriately play the political game? So the meaning of all these questions is that it is fundamental to performance to be in a role that allows you to contribute in a way that is authentic to you and plays indeed to your strengths, your skills, abilities, but also your interests and the person you are. It's important to work smart more than hard because there's always an endless to-do list. And as you contribute, it is just as important for that contribution to be recognized. Now, get along. Here are a few of the themes around getting along. Clearly, we all know that to progress our career and to get recognized, rewarded, to be on the receiving end of advancement, we need to perform. At least some cynical folks would say that we need to be seen to perform. And indeed, I hope I made the point in the previous slide that being noticed is fundamental. And the way you get noticed is by getting along with others. If you are viewed to have either an attitude problem, which is an American idiom clearly to designate people who get on other people's nerves, or if you are invisible, you are viewed as too nice or not enough ambitious in the context of your work, that is one of the ways that you will be passed over and ignored. Now, a key element around getting along is, of course, one's boss. The statistics tell us that the majority of resignations are because people do not get along with their boss, and because we do spend quite a lot of time with that person, clearly that becomes quickly unbearable. What is interesting, of course, is that we also know that very few bosses are naturally suited to their managerial roles. That's because they were promoted up the corporate ladder for their hard skills, their technical abilities, rather than their management abilities. There are exceptions to that, but that generalization still holds some sway. In that sense, when your boss is poor at managing you, it should not be a surprise, and there are ways that you can in fact manage your boss so that he and she can manage you better. Few organizations will equip people who are in management responsibilities with the right skill set, but again, there is training available usually by the firms themselves, but if not outside. for management. So if you yourself feel that you would like to become a boss but are unsure about your managerial skills, help is out there, and it's just like any form of training. Generally, are you good at building relationships? Promotions happen because we get noticed in a positive way, because people don't mind that you will get along. Again, people who make the wrong impression, and I've talked about the so-called attitude problem or the problem of invisibility, others will not support their promotion. As we move up the food chain, it is not just enough to have our boss who is keen to promote us. We need to have a broader range of allies who will vote in favor of our promotion. In terms of building relationships, the big challenge is for you to make an assessment of whether you are an extrovert or an introvert. Both types of folks can build very successful relationships, but extroverts will build a broad range of relationships, whereas introverts will typically want to build fewer but deeper relationships. And that does of course play a part in terms of the networks that these two kinds of individuals will have. When it comes to building relationship, my tip for you is one of identifying commonalities rather than differences with people. Here we share the commonality that we all went to an Ivy League school, and that's a nice icebreaker. If we were to meet, we first start to tell each other what our alma mater was and which class we were part of. This is the fundamental building block to developing allies who will want you to get ahead. Getting buy-in and support from peers as well as subordinates is crucial to getting ahead and to obtaining whatever you want from your career, whether it is indeed to go up the corporate ladder, but it could be to make lateral moves, get overseas assignments, or simply get the kind of work that you enjoy. Of course, in the workplace, conflict will erupt, and it is important to either avert conflict, but if not possible, then to learn how to manage conflict. And so those are, again, the sort of themes that I want to suggest you have a think about for those of you that felt you were not so happy with your the engagement that you have with others. What is really going on for you? Is it the boss? Is it that you're an introvert who may have too narrow a network, for example? In terms of building relationships, the key skill is that of listening. People sometimes struggle with listening because it involves silence. And the silence for me, when I started to practice my listening skills, was that I really counted to 7 in my head. And that allowed me to stay mum for the duration of a little bit under 7 seconds, because I counted faster than that. Clearly, when I was busy listening to me counting, I was not listening to what the other person said, but I gave them that space, and they felt more listened to. And as I learned to stay silent, I eventually could really listen to what they said. Secondly, listening is really about the art of asking open questions in order to promote a really open and constructive dialogue. And often when we don't listen, it's because we're listening inside our head to a story that we find interesting and which tells us about ourselves rather than the other person. Also essential around the theme of getting along is that of influence. And I find that a lot of very competent people struggle to influence others. Influencing is about reaching out to others, about talking about their agenda rather than yours. And it's therefore about adapting to your audience, having that openness to the other person, and letting them take the reins of the conversation for a moment. Finally, getting along is also influenced by self-confidence. There are, for all of us, situations when we will feel somewhat more vulnerable. And it is important that we know what situations those are. For some, it will be one-on-one meetings where they feel very, in the eye of the beholder. For others, it will be presenting to large audiences. What is important in managing that sense of vulnerability is to develop an inner dialogue that enables you to manage your emotions and your behavior in a more constructive fashion. And indeed, in challenging situations, it is to remain appropriately assertive even when you don't totally feel naturally like it. Again, those are general remarks. As you can see, I'm talking about a breadth of subjects, and I'm just curious to know if anybody would like to talk more about any of these points. Any questions at this stage?
And actually, yes, we did have a question come in. How do you get noticed if you work remotely or in a satellite office?
That's an interesting one. I mean, noticed is not necessarily being seen, it's being heard. So in that sense, while you may be out of the eye and indeed the ear of your immediate manager, or indeed the sphere of visibility that you target, we have technology, and we have through meetings on phone, meetings via TV, where we see each other on screens, and indeed email. We have those new communication channels to use. The important thing around being noticed is what I call ethical bragging. Ethical bragging is a set of precepts that I developed simply for myself, which allowed me to communicate around my work so that it would get noticed. And indeed, I used email a lot because in a lot of circumstances, my boss wasn't sitting in the same location as I. So I would send that person emails around celebrating, a transaction, a deal, a piece of work that I had been involved. I often use the term we when I send those emails and copied others who had contributed. And the term we allowed me to feel less pressured in terms of having to say I, which I felt uncomfortable with. Some people don't mind, but I did. And it allowed me, of course, to share credit with others, which made them happy. And in celebrating our successes and telling the story of how we got to the good outcome that I was communicating on, there was also again a sense of adventure that made the email interesting to read. And I always got replies from my bosses to say, oh, thank you. And of course, when performance management time came, I would sometimes have to remind that person of a few of those stories I'd been sharing throughout the year. So this is just a little example that we have now the means to communicate, but clearly we need to be proactive despite the distance. Is that answer hopefully helpful?
Yes, it does. And we did have a few more questions, so whenever you want to ask the questions, let us know.
We don't have any more questions at this stage?
We do have. We actually, quite a few came in.
Shall we take one other one?
Sure. So can you give examples of how to improve your ability to influence others?
I have developed a system which is a 4-step system. It's called SWAY. And so indeed, if you use that system, you will sway others to your point of view. But the real element around influence is that most of us, when we seek to influence others, develop a very persuasive argument and then go and talk to whomever we want to influence, a group of people or a particular individual, and hope that that wonderfully, brilliantly constructed argument will, win their support. What we forget when we do that is that we are really communicating with ourselves. We are using the words, the terminology, the logic that appeals to our mindset. And when we fail to influence is because we have somebody that is built differently. So the important way of getting over those hurdles when you see that you don't naturally persuade somebody because they're clearly not on the same wavelengths as you is actually to drop your agenda and work to theirs, and to ask indeed open questions around what are your priorities, what are your challenges. That sounds indeed very vague, and depending on the context, I would refine those a little bit. But nevertheless, the spirit of the question is one which is really open because you want to demonstrate an attitude of service. And the person will share with you, hopefully, some of their concerns, challenges, aspirations, preoccupations, and that will give you the platform to rebound and start discussing. But again, not in a telling way, but rather in saying, well, I'm just wondering, now that you've shared with me your preoccupations, how the project that I'm being mandated to execute might help you. If you want, for example, to influence them to get their support, for funding for the project. How do you see my project helping you, if at all? And let them work through and persuade themselves in the way that their mind works, which is not yours again, towards that. So it's the difference between effectively a push approach where we tell people, and usually when we fail, with the push approach, we tend to push more and more and make it worse, to a pull approach where indeed you learn very slowly what the person is interested in, and that enables you slowly to find the hooks to talk to that person in a language that will resonate with them, and where your agenda is transformed into theirs. I'll suggest that we continue just because I'm mindful of time, but again, we will be able to take more questions at the end. So know yourself is the third one. So here, the know yourself is about a number of other themes, as always. Are you ready to think about your career? I guess all of you being here means yes. But what does your career mean to you? What is it that needs to be going on at work for you to be fulfilled? So different people will value different things. The role of values here is fundamental, and we see that another very important driver of resignation is when there is a dissonance between the values of the enterprise, the company, and the values of the individual. And this is made all the more challenging that some companies have official values that they publish, and other values that can be visible in the behavior that is going on in the workplace. So there is that sense of reflection about the meaning of your career. It's also connecting to what you're really good at. I spoke about strengths at the beginning, and the risk there is that we don't know enough about our strengths, so that we use only a small subset, that we take our strengths for granted, but they can be overused. There is around strengths a notion not just of abuse, which means that the strengths becomes de-energizing, but indeed learned behaviors, which are behaviors we acquire over time because we have seen others model them, and they're not authentic to us, but we have adopted them because we feel they help us get along in the world. The sweet spot that you're really looking for when it comes to career fulfillment is where your interests align with your capabilities, and indeed there you have the mastery of your trade, which is something I allowed to under the perform driver, but also you have the autonomy. You are capable of moving forward. Neuropsychology tells us that in order for us to be happy bunnies, we need to have a sense of control over our lives, and that sense is from autonomy as well as from predictability, that we know what will happen, or that we feel we are able to guess what will happen to a good degree. So when we are in environments where we feel it's too much uncertainty, that we don't know what's going on for us there, that we feel somewhat disempowered or disenfranchised, fulfillment is going to go out the window. If you want to change career, what might it take? A lot of folks that I talk to say that they don't know what else that they could do, that they've been doing something for a long time. So here is, have you thought about repackaging your talents, and how do you go about assessing your talents and then of course repackaging them? Looking at strengths is very useful in that space because strengths are across situations, and through the prism of strengths we are able to look at our talents, our capabilities, our skills in a renewed way. Clearly, building a career is not always a direct trajectory, and one has to be ready when it makes sense to make a lateral move in order to learn something and then progress. It is important to be clear about what is the definition of career success for you. And indeed, many meanings will be out there. You will have noticed from my comments that I needed for my career to be fulfilling in a more personal way and not just rewarding financially. And I see, in fact, a lot of folks who are making very good money who are become disengaged because the money is not everything, although clearly, sadly, it will always be very important. When you want to make a change and you're not, what's holding you back? What are the concerns that are stopping you from maybe going after that new role and examining, really what's going in your mind? What are your thoughts and concerns, and what are the verifiable facts that make making a change so difficult for you? And here we are talking about moving oneself from a mindset of I can't to I won't. When we say, oh, I can't, surely I can't do this, most of the time there's a concern which really means I will not give it a go. And finally, what are you aiming for? How high do you want to go in the corporate ladder, all the way to the top, or a certain level? What motivates your ambition anyway? What will you get out of getting all these new business cards over time? And of course, there is always a price to pay for more responsibility, for bigger sounding titles. So it's a notion of payoffs and trade-offs, which is important here. Will you stop seeing your kids, and how much does that matter to you? And what can you do about it to mitigate that? It is also about keeping in touch with your changing aspirations. We don't typically want the same thing at 21 that we want at 45, and it is therefore keeping that self-awareness to understand that as life happens and we marry, get kids, or other things happen in our lives, they shape what we want out of our work. So this is the more sort of philosophical piece of the model, and indeed I started with the very obvious ones. For me, again, promotion is really around getting the right visibility around your contribution, because if you work and nobody notices, sadly that will go to waste. It is the fact that unless you get along with others, you will have roadblocks and won't be able to get ahead as you would otherwise. But then fundamentally, that third piece is, the so what question. What is all this about anyway, and how does that fit in the grander scheme of things? And if you are looking for some more personal fulfillment about your career, these are the kind of questions that you might want to have a little bit of a think about. Any questions on that part then?
Yes, so we actually do have quite a few questions that came in. So we have a question from Steven. He's actually saying that selling myself to the interview team is sometimes difficult. Do you have suggestions to relax and focus on positives to sell oneself?
Yes, connect to your talents. Again, a lot of us that are achievers, and it is a product, a lot of our culture, do become much more aware of what we can't do, of what we don't do so well. And I have a process that I go through with some clients, which indeed is around reconnecting to all the multiplicity of talents that we have. Some of them express themselves, of course, in our work life, but some of them express themselves in our personal lives. But they're still a talent, and they might be relevant to a different employer. So it is about connecting to your talents. It's about also connecting to a personal story. Storytelling is one of the oldest and most effective way of communicating, and when we articulate, for example, our talents into a story, for example, a story of growth, a story of learning, a story of progress, and we are able to embed that story both in our CV and in our interview. We create a deeper and rather subliminal connection to the other person through the medium of storytelling. So there is therefore around selling yourself both the fact of being clear about what you have to sell, celebrating that, and harnessing it through the medium of a form of storytelling. I mean, I'm not saying let's write War and Peace, but there are ways of communicating in the storytelling fashion, and there are 6 steps for that. It's very simple, but very effective. I use storytelling a lot when I try to present myself, and it resonates with people. I've done a little bit of that with you here, and you will have to be the judge of whether that was effective or not. Any reaction to that, or any other question on that subject?
We do have a question that came up. When you want to make a change in your career path, what would you recommend? Maria is finding out that most important requirement for a new position is the previous experience.
That's true, and that's sadly the blindness of employers and the guardians, the gatekeepers, such as the folks in the HR functions. The easy way for an employer to fill a position is just to take somebody who's been doing that already. And I have absolutely some sympathy for that position because, after all, an established track record looks like a good basis on which to have a future contribution. So why not? And indeed, when it comes to making a change like that, it is usually easier to do it within your existing organization, where you are a known quantity and where people will have a sense of your potential and your ability, therefore, to repackage your skills and do something different from what you are being paid for. I had the challenge in my career a number of times, and on 2 occasions I stayed where I was to transition into that new role and then leave and go somewhere else to do it. So it might be also a step approach in order to make that change, because a new employer will rarely give you that chance, or it will ask you to start at a more junior level, which you may or may not be willing to do.
Gotcha. And we do have a follow-up.
I'm going to continue, if that's okay. One of the key drivers that people have found is essential to being talented and to getting ahead in terms of a career is curiosity. So indeed, let me encourage you to think constantly about learning. For most of you, you will need learning. It won't be just a byproduct. If you enjoy learning things, you will look for opportunities to learn. And actually, I left my last job because I was not learning anything, and I could feel myself losing the will to live. And in this role, I learned so many things every day, and that is so invigorating. So if you do like to learn, then please leverage all opportunities that you have in your firms for training. Some of us feel sometimes very conflicted. I have this big project to finish and I would like to go to training. Do make the time. It is valuable for both for you in terms of the actual knowledge acquisition, but indeed in terms of how you feel about it. Understand your learning style. Some people are very bookish. Some people won't mind sitting in front of the computer for hours. Others will need to be engaging with someone. And so indeed, whatever your learning style is, more bookish or more experimental, find that and pursue the learning that makes sense for you. You won't be surprised if I tell you that over time, in terms of a career progression, the soft skills become increasingly more important than your technical skills. And that's why, sadly, as we were talking about earlier today, when people become promoted into managerial positions, they're in fact promoted into a position of incompetence because nobody has equipped them with managerial skills around listening, around time management, allocating work appropriately based on people's capabilities and interest. The delegation is a challenge. We get into micromanagement stories, or indeed complete disconnection between manager and team members, just to mention a few of the really sad developments that happen. So there is also a limit to it, need technical expertise. As you go up the food chain, you realize that you're no longer the expert, and letting go of that expertise is sometimes a challenge. So the process of becoming a manager and then a leader involves some letting go, and I wanted to make sure I mention that. And you become not anymore the person who knows, but the person who makes possible. You don't work with others or for others, you work through others. Linked to that theme of versatility, that ability to be curious and to morph appropriately as circumstances warrant, is how are you, at operating outside of your comfort zone, in terms of that. What that means, and also linked to the theme of getting along, is the role of networking. Some of us are very naturally good at it, others find that excruciatingly painful. And I was one of those, so I developed a little methodology. As you can see, I was a banker who did risk models, and now I do people models. And I developed for myself, I'm always the one who needs the models first, a model that is called networking skills for the individual who can't bear to. But networking has a role, and doing some of it will stand everybody in good stead, even for those of you, and again I include myself, who found it daunting. It will around operating outside your comfort zone, and that theme of curiosity and moving on is asking for more responsibility and the assertiveness that is necessary to do that. Are you open to overseas assignments? Machi and I were both commenting before you joined that we're both very lucky to have had international backgrounds, and how helpful that has been. Demonstrating adaptability and breadth of capability will be key, especially for those of you who aspire to be senior leaders in the context of firms that may have an increasingly global footprint. Then there's the whole dimension of change. It seems sometimes that the only constant in the office is indeed change. And here what I want to encourage you to think about is, what is your natural reaction to change? Some of us are very excited about change, and we are natural change champions, and a lot of others, it's not surprising, will of course have more of a negative reaction to change. So understand what is your natural reaction, and instead of fighting it, embrace it in order to understand it. On that basis, it is possible to reframe your initial reaction to change towards something which will be more empowered and possibly more constructive. I always tell people, even if you don't want to embrace change, you don't like the new strategy, what it's doing to your group, and you want to walk away, the fact that you will know clearly why you walked away will be helpful in telling your wife, or of course your husband, your friends, and ultimately the headhunter that you will meet, and the next person that will look to hire you. So having a constructive dialogue around change, even if it's to reject it, is important, and also it moves you away from a place of just negative emotion to something a bit more empowered. Indeed, because change is so prevalent, if you're able to manage it for yourself, then you may lend a helping hand to others. And if you are in a leading position, then you can indeed lead change effectively, because you understand how you and your team experience change. Change is also when we switch jobs, and there it's around how do we settle in and quickly produce some quick wins so that we demonstrate a positive impact as rapidly as possible, and make that positive first impression, especially when it's a new role in a new employer. So again, around that theme of versatility, any reactions, comments, and of course questions?
Yes, so we do have a question about versatility. So we have Miguel, who considers himself versatile as one of his greatest strengths, which has allowed him to perform well at very different functions and teams. Could this versatility also be seen as a sign of weakness or lack of focus?
That's a really interesting one. I'm working right now with a client who has indeed a little bit that profile. They're I wouldn't say a jack of all trades because that's a bit too much, but they indeed have a very versatile range of capabilities, and that person has struggled to find a new role because at least his CV is confusing to people. So we go back to, I think, one of the points, I think it was Maria who raised it earlier, which is that I would say short, narrow-mindedness, I will even say, of recruiters and employers in saying, I want somebody who fits in that box. And so to fit in the box, you must have done it before. You must have a track record of it. And if you have done it a little bit, first of all, that may not be enough to persuade me you're good at it. And in fact, if I see that you've been, a little bit of a butterfly, then I could even potentially construe the wrong impression. So I think that the risk is clearly there. Now, it can absolutely be mitigated, and I think a very, structured CV, and indeed a CV that might need to be adjusted to play to the various areas of expertise and strengths would be the way I would go. I would not have a baseline CV, which would be a mishmash of everything, because that mishmash is indeed creating that risk of misinterpretation.
Mm-hmm. That's great. We also have two really good questions from Kate. Can you elaborate on the 6 steps of storytelling as well as the model of networking skills that you mentioned?
If we have time, I'll do it at the end.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because I'm just concerned that I have a bit more. But anyway, even if I don't get to it, Kate and I can have a chat. It's not a problem.
Perfect.
Now, the last step is lead. And when we talk about leading, for me, the first question I ask people around leadership is, do you even lead yourself? Someone who has, for example, very poor time management skills or bad communications or is simply not interested in others, those are sort of red flags among a series of others that let me know that they're not necessarily interested or ready to lead, although again, work can be done. So there's this notion of self-leadership, and what does that mean anyway? For me, it's something around taking personal responsibility as well as taking action. At one of my employers, and I think we've seen that also in some ads, there is that phrase, it starts with you. And while that may seem a little bit like an advertising slogan, I think to remember that indeed it does start with us is helpful. So there is a lot of debate around whether leadership is indeed innate or acquired. There is debate around whether when we are a leader, then we are all the time leading, or indeed if leadership is situational, which means different people get to lead at different times. We were just talking about self-leadership, but for most people, leadership comes from having followers. There's the issue of charisma that keeps popping its silly head, I think, when we talk about leadership, and in fact charismatic leaders are very poor leaders, and I could tell you why. There is another concept which is interesting around leadership, which is leader as servant, i.e. leadership is not for me to fulfill my aims, it is for me to make happen good things for others. Another debate around leadership is whether it's all about vision or indeed whether it's about delivery. I think that debate is silly. It's about both. And then there is another last theme, and there are many because there's more books on leadership, it seems, than grains in the sand, is the issue of ethics. I would argue that when we look at history, we see a lot of very nasty people who were fantastic leaders, and in particular Adolf Hitler comes to mind. And that's one charismatic leader. So, having sort of thrown at you some of these attributes that some are bandied about in terms of leadership, the question is, do you have what it takes to lead others, assuming that you have the capacity to lead yourself? I've already alluded to what I call the journey from manager to leader, and the fact that it is in part about letting go. And it is about letting go because you need to make room for new skills when you aim to lead. And indeed, for example, you need to work more on your communication or work at communicating differently is one of the examples that comes to mind. There is the issue of how, you will motivate others because indeed, if you want to lead someone, you need to be able to pull the right buttons. We all know that when we look at an org chart in a firm, it's not necessarily those who have the senior positions that are really leading, although in theory they should, but that's not necessarily the case. Now, what kind of leader can you be and why? I alluded when we talked about change to some of us who are change champions, and that's a form of leadership. There are people who are particularly good at so-called transformation leadership, which is about seeing challenges as opportunities, and those people also facilitate the role of innovation and producing new things that will harness a competitive advantage. But beyond the competitive advantage angle through innovation, there's also around harnessing the collective wisdom, the collective knowledge of people, and indeed serving the community, serving the farm, not just to make the big bucks and get to fly in private jets. Now, as we close this, I wanted to share with you, in fact, not one but two leadership models, although they are very much intricately linked. And how you will react to the two models is going to be testament to the two kinds of people that we could, in theory, categorize you into. So it's the same model, it's just presented in a different way because it will resonate differently depending on how your brain is wired. So in terms of you as leader, I have created something called the Wizard of Oz model. Indeed, it will reflect the characters in the story. Now, indeed, because leadership can be acquired, but it also starts with us. I will argue that leadership is about being connected to your heart, your courage, and your brain, and all of us have that for sure. So if you are facing a leadership challenge, it may be that you need to connect more to your heart, which is around developing people, which is around not hoarding the public glory, and which of course is around influencing others by connecting with them. It's also around the integrity that you bring to your leadership posture. Courage is indeed around having courage, because leadership challenges call for some fair amounts of guts. It calls, I would even say, for passion. What it does call is for regularly is commitment. I'm going through this very fast, I'm aware. So of course there's a little bit more to all of this, but I'm just trying to mind the time since we had a setback at the onset. And then there's the brain aspect, which is symbolized by the scarecrow. Here it's of course around your capacity for prioritization, for example, which is fundamental to leadership. We can't be everywhere at once, so we have to prioritize. And that goal orientation, that capacity to focus, and that effectiveness capacity is also in the brain domain in order to get the right things done in the right way. Now we could look at it through a different prism, which is through the 3R model. And when we look at that, we see that the first way that we can be a leader is by reflecting. And reflecting means that we associate ourselves with a group. Sometimes we actually create the group, but we are part of that group, and the group can identify that we share enough characteristics with them, so we're one of them. When you reflect, you use your emotional quotient, and indeed that correlates to the heart. You listen, you connect, you engage, you communicate, you network, you care, you delegate, you empower. So this is about a horizontal relationship with others, and you propose to lead them based on the fact that you're one of them, and they recognize themselves when they look at you, when you reflect back to them. And that's the basis for trust. Second element of the leadership model with the 3 R's perspective is the represent. Here you demonstrate to those that you lead that you can identify feedback and promote the group's interests. You impress the group by standing up for the group. So here you use your ability to commit, to be accountable. You stand up, you speak up, you promote, you effectively champion, and you energize and you drive. Lastly, the sort of recipe for leadership is around realize, and in this third step, as a leader, you are master of that group identities and expression, and it is therefore possible for you to shape it through noteworthy achievements that reinforce the group's stature and ensure its longevity. You become the group's engineering spirit. Here you use your IQ, so it's connected to the brain dimension in the Wizard of Oz. You strategize, you visualize, plan, but of course mobilize, execute, achieve, deliver, and then prioritize, which I also mentioned in the brain. So you see how the two models are really the same, presented differently. But some people find it easier to say, okay, I have a leadership challenge. What does it call for? More the domain of courage, more the domain of the brain. And others said, I don't want this wishy-washy stuff around how courage and brain. But I understand that as a leader, I have to remain capable of reflecting to my team. I must not be disconnected from them. And that on that basis of reflection, I'm able to represent them as their champion, and then I'm able to also enable the group to do group enhancing activities that reflect positively on the group, ensure its longevity. So this is the wrap-up part where, of course, let me make sure, that I let you ask, 1 or 2 questions for those of you still with us on the leadership model, and then we'll go to a wrap-up where you can ask anything.
Actually, for leadership model, we don't have any questions, so we can go to the wrap-up and then all the other questions.
Okay, so I guess everybody's digesting what I said, and I'm mindful that I went through it quite quickly. So in terms of the wrap-up, indeed, any questions that you'd like to ask about what we've discussed, you will see on that slide the two web addresses. One is the URL for my newsletter, Career Trips. It comes out every month. And people seem to enjoy it. What I noticed is when the topic resonates with people, they open the newsletter. Otherwise, they tend to file it for a rainy day when they might like to have it. So that's just an offer. And of course, if you would like to talk about something a bit more personal that you didn't feel like sharing on this webinar, you have my website. And that takes me, and we will take answer questions if we need to, but I want to make sure that I've said to all of you that the first people who contact me, then I'm happy to offer you a 45-minute completely complimentary career diagnostic session. Indeed, looking at some of the elements that I've discussed today, if you feel that you'd like a bit more clarity around where you are in your career, and if you want a chance to reflect and discuss on some of those challenges that you can't seem to completely get your head around, as well as talk, of course, more constructively about what you would like to have happen. This is something that I'm happy to have, and hopefully, we can do something a little bit more tailored and customized than what we've done today, and leave you equipped with some food for thought, as well as some tips that you can use in the office fairly straight away. So I just wanted to make sure that I had offered that to you, because I wanted to really show that I like to be part of this network. Going to Brown was one of the best moments of my life, and I wanted to make sure I shared with you who I see as my community. And again, on that note, I'm very happy to take further questions.
Great, thank you so much. And we're going to go into questions right now, but I would like to thank everybody else for coming and staying with us today. And for all the great questions too. So we will be sending out.
And I'm mindful that Kate asked two important questions. Now both of these require quite lengthy answers. So Kate, if I can suggest that you maybe email me and then we can find a time to chat and you can use one of these complimentary sessions, I'll be happy to talk to you more about it and also to position it for you in your context rather than just roll through a model.
Mm-hmm. And Alexandra's email is on the bottom of her slide that you can see right there. So, so definitely please reach out to her. And we do have quite a few other questions. We can probably do maybe 3 or 4 in order to have time. So can you actually, for resumes, do you find that employers are looking for more results-oriented resumes versus a description of the role and work completed within a role?
Yeah, I mean, I have a view that some people find a bit original about resumes, so I'll just tell you what I think, and then you'll see what you think about it. But too often, in my mind, and I've recruited so many people, that's how I came to that view. Resumes are about a laundry list of what people did, and not all of it is relevant to the job that they're trying to apply for. So I find that resumes lack impact, they lack focus, and they like meat, they like substance, because people are so keen to have 10 bullet points to show the myriad of things that they did, that instead of showing competence and impact, they end up just showing how busy they were. So you will see that with CVs, what I've noted for people who talk a lot about CV writing is this sort of action words, and what did you do as opposed to what was your title. But what I talk about is outcome words. What did you make possible? And so what is the difference that you made when you were in that role and you did X, Y, and Z? I'll give you an example from my own life. When I first did my CV, I put that I had been a MATIF trader. MATIF stands for French futures and options market. So that was one of the things I put on it. Now, of course, futures and options trader, very nice, doesn't tell you anything. Was I good at it? Did I make any money at it? And how did I make my money? Did I take a lot of risk or not, for example? Those could be questions that somebody reading the CV might have, and clearly none is answered by just reading MATIF trader. Now, when I changed it to have some action words, I said traded intraday futures and options for a number of years. And again, people can see, okay, she had a busy life, and especially as she couldn't have any overnight positions, so clearly she needed to make quite a few trades a day if she was going to stand a chance of making any money. So you can see that bustling atmosphere here in the trading floor. Very nice. Again, doesn't tell you very much, at least in my books. So eventually I got to my outcome words, where I said that I consistently generated one of the top 5 P&L in the trading floor, and that I was leveraging that experience of being in the trading floor in my risk management responsibilities, something like that. I don't have my CV in front of me, but now what are you seeing with this example? You're seeing now we went to something that started to talk about something, and remember the storytelling. Here you're starting to get the sense of somebody who has a story to tell, and that story is of someone who indeed made money, and now suddenly people want to meet me because they want to know how much money I made. They want to ask me that question. They're just dying to know. And how is it that somebody who was 21 years old made that P&L? They just want to know that story. So it's also a teaser. And they certainly are very interested in somebody who has so much promise and potential. And of course, by then, I'm no longer a trainer anyway. I'm a risk manager. So is that experience relevant? Should I have scrapped it completely from my CV? No, because what I'm telling you is that now as a risk manager, I still talk to the traders on the floor, and I talk to them as one of them. I speak the same language, and therefore when they're up in arms and don't want to respect the risk limits with me, they will understand it because I can communicate in a language they understand. So suddenly that experience that is far away, at the beginning of my career becomes relevant even further down the line, 10 or more years later. What it also tells you is that clearly to say what I wrote took me 2-3 lines. So suddenly I went for something that, only used 1 line of text in my CV to consuming 3. So it is that process of selection. I chose to talk to them about it because I felt it was relevant and would have impact. But I made choices because I can't have that long laundry list if I'm going to tell a few stories like that. So that's just my view on CVs and how you move from very laundry list type of approaches to something that is outcome orientated and the difference you made and the value you added. And in that way, I would argue that you become not anymore this 2-dimensional piece of paper. You become this fully fleshed out 3-dimensional individual that they start to have a sense of. And it's a bit like trying a car. You get that future experience today. Any other question?
Very well said. We definitely have other questions, but in order to respect everybody's time, we're coming up to another hour. It will be please send the questions to Alexandra at coachingforinspiration.com. So any questions that we weren't able to get to, please feel free to reach out to her. As you have seen today, she's very willing to share her knowledge. So I would like to just thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, the audience, for coming today and for sticking with us throughout the whole thing. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for your questions. I hope that what I shared with you was relevant. This was my first webinar. It's the first occasion when I address folks without being able to see them. And vice versa, and so not being able to make eye contact was an interesting challenge. I look forward to hearing from you if you'd like that, and to having some of those chats that I was very happy to offer. So take very good care, all of you. Very best wishes in your career.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I must mention that Alexandra is a mentor of ours on the Exec Mentor Network, so we're very happy to have her there too. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming today, and we'll see you soon.